Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. This is Vishal Mathur from the Telecom Infra Project. I'm the Chief Commercial Officer there. I have a wonderful guest with me, Arijit Sengupta. We're going to allow Arijit talk a little bit about what Aible does within the telco sphere, but also with respect to how he's driving forward an AI journey with telecom operators and partners there. Arijit, nice to meet you.
Thank you. Same here.
Thank you very much. I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, Arijit, and tell us a little bit about Able as well.
Yeah. As you mentioned, I'm the founder and CEO of Aible, and we have been working with a lot of the largest telcos and partners in the ecosystem. You'll see it in the next few minutes. And my personal background is before this, I started something called Beyond Core, which became Salesforce Einstein Discovery. Ended up doing about 1,000 projects, AI projects during my Beyond Core time and my Salesforce time. So wrote a book called AI is a Waste of Money based on those
Love it.
1,000 projects. And what I laid out was the reason AI projects fail is because of disconnect between the business users and IT and data science. That's the main reason it fails.
Makes sense.
And that led to the Harvard Business School bringing me back in to co-create and co-teach the first AI course in the MBA program there, and studied AI at Stanford before it was popular. I have 27 or so patents in this space at this point.
Amazing. Very illustrious background. I feel privileged being speaking to you. And tell me a little bit about Able as well.
So Able's focus has been this mission called I Am Able. So what we were worried about was AI made by the many for the few, right? So we really felt that it's the business users who need to build these agents, but these agents have to be at enterprise scale. To us, that means both just kind of scalability in terms of how much data you can process, how many instances you can support, but also data security, also consistency, also all the requirements that an enterprise IT has to have the appropriate governance when you do this AI. And we have, of course, gotten lots of awards in this space. One of the things that we really focused in on is this idea of anyone can build agents. So we did a hackathon at the state of Nebraska where they were able to build 222 agents in 90 minutes with just 36 people who had never received training prior to that moment, right? So they were trained on Able and they were able to build 222 agents in 90 minutes. And this included college students, interns of the agency, staff of the agencies, and the CIO and the CDO of the state of Nebraska. The second part is, well, what kind of scale can you do? So CVS talked about how we were able to look at data at the level of 4.8 billion rows of data, 10 million variable combinations, and then 20 plus iterations of different size data sets. Now, what should be interesting is when you're working at this kind of volume of data and you're doing 20 plus iterations in 2 days, you can't really be doing this manually. Like there's no way to get over this if you're manually tagging that data, manually cleaning that data. So we've really automated all aspects of that end-to-end data pipeline from where it sits all the way to value being created by agents. The last part is we really believe you need to be able to rapidly iterate. Everybody has different ideas of what an agent is. So in this case, Baptist Health, they did 100 plus iterations in 5 days. They were able to align with different stakeholders and get to consensus. And by the way, if you look at the breadth of KPIs done by Baptist Health, it's extremely broad. And the main thing I wanted to explain here is the breadth of the possibilities really gets changed when you can build many, many prototypes very quickly, do it at any scale, and iterate to get to success. Does that make sense? Like what makes Able different?
Yeah, absolutely. I get it. Let's carry on.
And Verizon, for example, also highlighted this iterative process in a presentation they did with us about a year back, because we don't really believe one trick will solve the problem, right? You try foundation models, you try prompt augmentation, you do post training. All of those capabilities are built inside Able, so you can try many things to get to success. And we really worked to get this to work across all the different aspects of the enterprise. So these are the partners we launched with at Gartner GTC, at NVIDIA GTC last week, our SafeClaw offering. But if you look at the desktop, we work with NVIDIA on the DGX Spark, with Dell and Lenovo on their desktop supercomputers. For NeoClouds, we had Nebius. At the edge, we were working with Cisco and Lanner, and there's a really cool Cisco story I'll tell you in a second. We, of course, work with all three clouds. In fact, we're doing some very interesting things around the telcos with AWS there. We natively support the major data warehouses. So Snowflake at Mobile World Congress showed off a bunch of different use cases that we had done with them in the telco domain. And then, private cloud servers. So NVIDIA, Cisco, Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc. And if you look at the breadth of kind of use cases, there's a lot of different ones. So internally, you can actually apply us to understand what's happening with your customer. In fact, one of the most common use cases for telcos has been customer churn and customer billing disputes. Because we can go really deep into what is causing that churn, look at millions of variable combinations, and give you very actionable insights. Also, things in operation. So people have been using it for preventative maintenance and optimization of resources. And then we'll talk about this in a second, how the world of long running agents, what the people are calling claws, are really changing how telcos come to play in this story, right? And we'll come to that in a second. So first, I wanted to quickly show you something we did more than a year back, way before claws were a thing. And this is a maintenance ticketing agent. There is a preventative maintenance problem that is highlighted. The system diagnoses and says what's the likely reason this is happening. It then finds, what is the appropriate crew, what crew is nearby. Let's look at the incident histories from other tickets, figure out what could be causing this, and literally create work notes specific to this problem, specific to that crew. And that way they can take very focused actions. So this is something we did a while back, but this is more of I call it almost like an atomic agent, right? Something happened, the agent did a bunch of really useful things, but it did it one thing at a time, one incident at a time. But then Jensen talked about how every company in the world today needs to have an OpenClaw strategy last week. And OpenClaw, fundamentally, if you think about it, it is long-running agents that can call other singleton agents, if you will, that can use tools, that can be chatted with, that can be adjusted on an ongoing basis, that have an ongoing memory. It fundamentally changes the art of the possible. And at that very event, we launched Aible SafeClaw in partnership with 8 enterprise leaders, including NVIDIA, Cisco, Dell, HP, Nebius, and others. What is this? Because this is, I think, the moment where if I may take your audience to a slightly kind of step back and look at this. People have been talking about the AI grid for some time now. And again, NVIDIA announced the AI grid last week as well. But you really need to think about AI grid as more than just the edge. Because if you just think about the edge, you're really saying that telcos are real estate providers, if you will, right? I am running some GPU at the edge. But really, when you think of the AI grid, it's not just the edge, it is also the glue between the core and the edge. And that's the telco. That's what provides that capability. So NVIDIA did this blueprint called the multi-agent intelligent warehouse blueprint. And you'll notice they had lots of different agents like operations agents, safety agents, agents running at the store, agents running at the warehouse. And we worked with Cisco. This was demoed at GTC in the Cisco booth. What we did is said, hey, if I run these agents, what would happen to my business KPI? How do I think about what is my expedite cost versus how much money I'm going to make from preventing stockouts? How do I think about that business impact? Secondly, you really do need to think of this as long running agents, right? Organizations don't really do expedites at a SKU level. Like I might be running out of cookies at the store, but nobody's going to just ship cookies over. They're going to look at, hey, what's happening with my cookie? What's happening with my coffee? Let's get bundled together a few different things, and then let's expedite it to the store. So without having a long running operations agent, which has that additional context, it was actually not realistic. So what we did with Cisco is we basically build these claws with them. And what you do is you just choose long-running agents as a template enable, and you put in a request, like saying, hey, what I want to do is I want to understand restock requests. I want to create a expedite prediction. Is it needed? And then do the expedite there. Aible then creates the agent steps for me, which I can review. I can go as detailed as I want. I can look at the security settings. I can look at what would this agent do to my business. So in this case, it is aggressively cutting expedites, but that may not be what I want. I might choose a different setting, say, you know what, I'm not trying to cut my expedite costs. I'm trying to increase revenue. And once I've done that, a warehouse manager who doesn't want to understand all that stuff can just chat with that agent and saying, hey, could you expedite this? Hey, have you expedited that? or when they look at it and they're like, hey, this is not looking aggressive enough. What are my other strategies? Can I change my strategy? And they can change to a different strategy so that the AI becomes more aggressive in when it's going to expedite. That's what we mean by a claw, a long running agent that a business user can adjust through chatting. Does that make sense? Any questions on this? This is, of course, new. The world of claws is very new. But I really am excited by how claws make telcos front and center, especially if you're going to have these kind of use cases spanning the core and the edge, because without the telco, there can be no SLA across the core and the edge.
I get it. Absolutely. If I may ask a question there, I
Please.
mean, certainly, yeah, you're absolutely right. Let me just step back. AI grid has been talked about for a while. I agree with you. Telcos, it's not about just the edge, it's about edge to the core. And actually, when you consider the a distributed compute environment, you will have stuff at the edge in the metro hall data center or in the data center itself. Many of the telcos that we have spoken to, some are really full blown into it, wanting to drive forward distributed compute strategies. Some are a little bit speculative because of the business case. They are all network engineers, right? They look at the economics here. I guess my question to you is a multi-claw approach is effectively driving forward the right propensity to use the infrastructure in the right way, understanding how the long running agents will work with other agents and actually drive forward a better right sized model for distributed compute to be used. Is that correct? Is that part of it?
Absolutely right. And what if one way to think about this is previously we were talking about edge and core, which is really about the nodes, right? Think of you as like each of the GPU clusters are nodes in this graph. It's really about those nodes. What clause coordinating across the edge and the core does is it's all about the edge now. It's all about the lines connecting the nodes. So
Mhm.
telcos, when we were just talking about the edge and the core, the very common question I would get from them is, well, wouldn't the cloud really handle that? Right? Like, why do I
Exactly.
care? Right? Is the latency really that different? But if you're talking about long running agents that are going to constantly talk with each other and passing information back and forth and optimizing across silos, all of a sudden the lines connecting the nodes become very crucial. If the
Mhm.
lines are not efficient, how are you going to do this? And now it also starts putting this interesting pressure on where should I run different aspects of these long running claws. So what we did in the Cisco project is we put a very lightweight claw at the edge because it was running at the store. It was running on just a L4. It had to be very lightweight. And it didn't have access to enterprise warehouse data, for example. But the one at the core, that was a Nemotron 3 Super. It was a bigger model. It was running on a bigger GPU, and it had access to the warehouse data, right? So it just the way you think about the problem changes when you forget about just the edges and like just the nodes, if you will, actually start thinking about the entire graph that you're trying to optimize. And that's where the telco is uniquely well positioned. Just one thing from IKEA, the whole data warehouse, the warehouse thing I was showing you, this was actually something, if you get a chance, your audience should take a look at the actual interview with Frank. But one of the things he was talking about why it's important to have this kind of agent first mindset. Like in their case, one warehouse had a problem. The autonomous agent from Aible figured that out and started giving them information about what the implications to their logistic is from that. In the old world, they would have had to notice it and then go ask questions. There's a huge difference between an autonomous agent figuring out a problem and proactively bringing it along with nuanced implications as opposed to a human having to ask the question. In one case, you're leveraging the power of AI to do humanly impossible things. In the other case, you're really forcing the human to ask more questions. Like the human has to work harder now that they have the AI, right? And similarly, Baptist Health talked about how they are using these claws across the core and the edge to solve problems. And again, back to a network audience, the telcos really need to come to play in this story because otherwise you can't coordinate across the core and the edge without that end-to-end SLA.
Fantastic. So let's sorry, last slide and then
Yeah,
carry
this
on.
is just
Yeah.
like to for people to understand the three ways they can work with us. One is, let us help drive your customer acquisition and retention. Let's figure out how to monetize your telco data with AI insights because we can automatically look at millions of variable combinations, find actionable insights. And the last part, this private 5G with clause spanning core and edge, I think it's the biggest opportunity in telco right now. If you understand what's happening with the AI grid, if you understand what is happening with clause, this is not a moment you can just kind of sit and let pass you by.
Pass you by. Otherwise, you miss the opportunity and being part of the value chain, of course. So then let's. This is fantastic. Thank you very much, Arijit. And it's really interesting. It's new insight for me as well. I think we talk to CTOs and we talk to the network teams. A lot of them are actually all focused around optimization, and you talked about that as a use case. We also then want to talk to the heads of B2B or B2C because it is about customers. It's about reducing churn and driving a level of revenue growth if possible. And I think from what I can understand from you, and tell me where I'm wrong, there is obviously the basic propositions that Aible can bring to the table to the telco does allow for the simplistic use of AI agents and actually integrating that into process, getting the best out of data, but also with the idea of OpenClaw going further than that, edge and core combined. Just summarize for me, what is your pitch to, a CTO or a director of network strategy or whatever it might be? What are you looking for them to understand? And actually, what are you looking for their business leads in the commercial sectors to understand?
So if you think about what happened with the iPhone and the telcos, it was a shift from minutes to bytes, if you will. What is happening with the clause, it's a shift from bytes to tokens, but tokens that actually help you coordinate across the core and edge. That's where the telco will have a big advantage. Like if it was just tokens being generated, where it got generated at the edge or the core is less interesting. If it is tokens spanning core and edge, the glue, if the telco is the glue, then it's extremely important. The risk the telcos have is if they don't step up and own this value chain, they will be stuck building the infrastructure to enable the value chain but won't monetize it, which is exactly what happened with Apple, is that they did all the heavy lifting, they put in all the equipment, they spent all the money, but the money went to Google and Apple and AWS and others, right? So this is the moment where telcos have to decide, are they going to be once again passive enablers of the value chain that is completely that needs the telcos as the glue? Or are they going to step in and say, you know what? I understand that claws are going to be pervasive, that we are going to do humanly impossible things, that we are going to use these technologies to span across silos. And then telcos are the glue. Let's go. Let's create end-to-end value propositions with SLAs that our customers want. Now you are actually generating new sources of revenue. You're completely changing your churn strategy from a reactive to a proactive, right? You're basically locking them in because the value you bring to the table can't be brought by anyone else. If, as a strategist, and I've studied with Clay Christensen, he was my faculty sponsor for the research that became BeyondCore, the guy who wrote Innovator's Dilemma. The whole idea of disruptive innovation comes from Clay. So Clay would always tell you when these kind of opportunities come in, you really want to get in there.
Grab them.
Right? Yeah. But telcos have maybe 6 months to step in and have a point of view. Otherwise, they're going to have other people have the point of view and lock up the value chain. That's what happened.
Okay, that's your sort of call to action there. 6 months is a short time, and institutionally, as an industry, it's not easy to change in 6 months. But hey,
telcos have never moved that fast. But if they had wanted to monetize the Apple moment, they would have had to move that fast as well. Like that was the difference between owning the value chain and capturing the value in the Google world versus what they actually ended up with. The time they had was not much longer than 6 months to react.
okay, coming back into the tip language, Aible came to FYUZ with NVIDIA in Dublin. And so Vijay Anand, your CMO, came and presented exactly this and actually didn't bring OpenClaw to the table, which is great. Thank you. Congratulations for that announcement. I think we purposefully in 2026 want to look at how do we drive this level of innovation into this industry. We'd love you to be a part of the journey with TIP, i.e. become a member, come to FYUZ in Seattle as well. Let me ask you then, Arijit, what would you want to see happening for yourself in 2026? What are the big ticket things that you're trying to do with some of the CSPs or partners?
So we are very focused on partnerships. So the reason we are doing the HP, Dell, Cisco, Nebius, AWS partnerships is we believe there is this very interesting movement. And as a small startup, we have to be a facilitator of that change. And we have to work with our partners to make this happen. In parallel, we are working with some of the largest telcos on the planet, one of which actually announced at FYUZ, but I don't have permission to mention their name.
Yeah.
But they did. You know who the name was, and you could tell people. But We are working with others of the same size because I think this is the moment where the telcos and the service providers for the telcos have to come together to unlock this value. It's a huge value proposition. Moving from humanly impossible, moving to the world of humanly impossible is what excites me about agents and claws. Replacing people has never been that exciting for me. I'm like, why are we doing this? Like, we are humans. Like, why are we thinking?
There's human in the loop in a better way, more efficient
Yes,
way.
but you're enabling completely impossible things with the human in the loop. That is giving every one of us superpowers. That's what we should be doing. Like the IKEA video, if you watch that, he talks about, look, when my warehouse staff is taking decisions, they don't know how many trucks have been brought into the loading bay, and they don't really know what ship is coming in 3 days that would affect that decision. How can we actually give that person the right decision point based on all that information they could have never conceived of at the same time, right? That's giving people superpowers.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is depth in the same sort of utility in a telco environment as well. Okay, Arijit, I think we're done. We've done a good 20 minutes conversation here, and thank you for the presentation. So everybody, this is the end of this conversation with Arijit. I'm hoping Aible will come again into the tip sphere quite soon, or even into FYUZ in Seattle. I'm hoping the team will be there. We should continue the conversations there as well. Make sure we create some connections. This podcast will be released out under the tip sort of onto our website, YouTube channels, Spotify, wherever we can put it. Go look at it. Go and talk to Arijit Sengupta from Aible if you're interested in what he's talking about. And thank you very much. Arijit, thank you very much for joining this podcast.
Thank you for having us. And thank you for a wonderful thing you're doing at the TIP project. It's really needed. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.